speaker was a delegate to the annual convention of the Gentlewomen's League, a national organization of young ladies and young matrons. The researcher reports that the speaker showed an initial reluctance to being taped. Possibly this is related to the fear found among some tribes that the camera will capture their souls, but graciously acquiesced immediately when she was assured that her remarks would eventually appear in print. The arts in our town never amounted to much until the League got behind them, but since that happened, a brief 2 years ago, the arts have been big time in our neck of the woods, as is, I think, adequately witnessed by your inviting me here to explain the League delegates from all over the nation just what it is we've done to the arts in our town. I know you didn't invite me to hear from my talents as a public speaker because I just don't have those talents, and I suppose I ought to apologize in advance for the lack of what you might call professional polish in my presentation this morning. But frankly, everything that has happened in the League's Arts for the People's program in our town since it began is wonderful, that I haven't the least hesitation in getting up and explaining it all to you in the hope that you can all do something and the same thing for your town when you go back home. It has been a wonderful 2 years. People have been wonderful. The artists have been wonderful. Everything's been, the newspaper's been wonderful. We have big scrapbooks, which are all on the table below me, and you are invited to go through the pages of them after my talk. I would say that if you had no other value, the Arts for the People program would be well worth, just for what it's done to the calling to the attention of the community, in fact, that the League exists, that it's a community service organization and is composed of a wonderful bunch of girls. It's wonderfully photogenic too, as you would see if you accept my invitation to page through the scrapbooks on the table below me after my talk this morning. Finally, our husbands have been wonderful, just a wonderful bunch of guys. They've pitched in, and when they were asked and when they were able, they've supplied us with ever so much materials, labors, and transportation, and it is in some ways the most precious ingredient for all arts in the People's program. Goodwill from their business acquaintance in the many fields ranging from wholesale grocers to higher education. Most important of all, our wonderful husbands have bravely gone without the pleasures of our company and have learned to do for themselves at home while we are out doing the arts in our town. The whole thing began when some of us girls realized that while the League had done so wonderful things in medicine and social science and making people aware of political issues facing the nation, it had never done anything for the muses. Well, the first job, of course, was to convince the members of the steering committee and through the chapter as a whole. It wasn't easy because an astonishingly high percentage of the people, even people educated in the better schools, just don't like the arts. The problem is that one that has haunted the program from its inception and from one of our proudest boasts is the way we have solved it on the broad scale, which I'll come to soon. On the narrow scale, that is, with our own steering committee and membership, we used a more limited but highly effective line of reasoning, which you may find useful too. What we said, simply, was this: the League in our lifetime has been pushed back steadily in one field after another as professionals entered it. Look at the hospitals. The nurses have taken over all the real nursing jobs, and all we can do is just go around with magazines and candy. Same thing with social service. We don't get to hear these people's problems and help them out anymore. The professionals do that. We just drive them to the outpatient ward or the clinic or the divorce court, or as professionals tell us. It isn't fair. Well, why, when all the mothers my age were hiring men to shovel snow off the carriage house and the sidewalks, it was an act of charity and an act of social service. Nowadays, we get some unionized man to run around in about 15 minutes with his snow plow and charge a pretty penny for it, too. Well, that's just an example of how private initiative is being killed. The arts are still open. We said, well, let's get in there and while we can, and that carried the day. The first thing we did was to announce a fine arts ball to raise money for the program. This got the membership solidly behind us because if there's one thing that they like, that it's a formal dance. And if there's a perfect setting for a fine arts ball, it's an art museum, which is where we had it. There was some discussion about having it at the BOOX art ball instead of the fine arts ball, but it was felt that it might give people the wrong impression. In your own communities, of course, different conditions may prevail. I'm just describing what we did in our town, and in our town people think the benched are immoral anyway, and the BOOX art ball somehow sounds like people dressing up nude. I'd like to explain about the finances of the ball because there has been some misunderstanding about them in our town, and you may have heard these things. The program netted $6,000 roughly from the ball. Now, it is quite true that we raised $9,000 in donations from the downtown merchants to pay for the expenses of the ball, and because of this, there have been some to say the program was just a way for the league members to have a good time at the public's expense. Others say that if we had just collected the donations and not had the ball, we would have been $3,000 ahead. This is simply not true. Those merchants are donating for goodwill, and they wanted their name in the brochures. The success of the ball can be measured by the sheer space of the newspaper, as well as the pictures. The ball really made the program known to the people in our town, and a good time was had by all. Everyone agreed it was the food and the decorations that made it, and we simply couldn't have had either and had the price ticket down to the reason for the members if a ticket had to carry the whole burden. From the first moment of actually activating our program, we had the motto, "Art can be fun." We had this printed up in little stickers by the firm that does all the league's printings as their contribution to the program, and we stuck the stickers everywhere you can imagine them. On lampposts and on the back of the bus seats, in taxis, powdered rooms, on menus, greeting cards. Why, Mary Lou, she's with me here in the convention, and we went to the bank and charged, we changed all of her food, clothing, and houseware allowance into $1 bills and stuck a sticker on every bill and paid for everything with those marked bills. It would have been interesting to see where the bills turned up, but in a few days all the members were doing the same thing with their allowances too, and the banks got together and asked our husbands for us to stop. It seems the stickers were not only a hindrance to the machines, but they were probably a criminal offense. I just mentioned that to show for a peak of enthusiasm we reached and have maintained. Oh, it's been so wonderful. But anyway, that wasn't just a motto. When the program really got going, we showed the people that the arts can really be fun. We opened our own exhibit program with a collection of great cartoons from the Saturday Evening Posts and the Old Collier. We tried to get the artists to contribute their originals, but it's a funny thing, we've never heard it from any of them. So Mary Beth's husband said she with me and all the conventions here, we had them copied and blown up to a larger size with some machines he had in the drafting office. Well, I want to tell you that the exhibit drew the biggest crowd the Old Cultural Institute has ever seen.